And we are recording. Welcome to the evening of Python coding, where each month we'll bring you a new Python tool or library that is being used to do something, and that something is always presented to us by an expert. Today, the expert we have with us is Adrian Valdez. And Adrian, show us ComfyUI. It's a very nice tool for making AI images.
Thanks, Jacob. Well, guys, ComfyUI is something that's been gaining quite a bit of popularity. It has a lot of support on GitHub. They've already created a desktop version of it that can be downloaded very quickly and simply by following their GitHub page. If not, I did make a GitHub repository, and the link to that should be either in the end or already accessible. Right now, the version I have installed is, in fact, the manual installation. You do have a few more toys that come with it and the quicker updates. Now, any ComfyUI or any ComfyUI workflow always begins blank. There are several different ways you can initiate this workflow and start bringing in your checkpoints or your models, and that, of course, is with your nodes, right? Now, if you're...
Adrian, before you run away, tell us how to install ComfyUI.
Oh, I gotcha. So that's what, like I was saying, so ComfyUI has a very strong following. They've done a great job of explaining that in their GitHub repo. Now, I'm assuming that, well, or anybody who's interested in this has already either installed it or gone over that hurdle. Like I said, there is a lot of support for that. It's pretty straightforward, and there is a desktop version of it, which is just downloaded and install. And like I said, that's why I'm already assuming that somebody who's watching this or listening to this was managed to download it and install it from the GitHub repo. Does that work?
No. It's important to have several versions. I understand people have can install it on Windows, on Linux, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, the repo has quite a bit of support. They got Windows, Linux, and I believe they have a Mac port. And yeah, it's as simple as just git cloning the repo, downloading it, installing the requirements, and then executing Python main.py.
Okay, and so you're showing the Python version today, correct?
Correct. This is the Python version, and I'm running it on Linux.
Okay.
Right. One of the add-ons that I suggest everybody should get is called the ComfyUI Manager. The desktop version has it pre-installed. For the manual install, you will have to git clone an additional repo inside of the directory. But again, if you're in your directory, if you're using VS Code or Claude or anything like that, just navigate to the main directory and then git clone the GitHub address also in the instructions, and it'll automatically add it onto your ComfyUI installation. You will have to restart ComfyUI anytime you load anything into file, anytime you bring any kind of new, if you look here, new models into the libraries or anything like that, right? LoRa's, VIEs, and you drop them in there. In order for them to be accepted by ComfyUI, you have to do a reload. Now, when you have the manager installed, you have a restart button here. Otherwise, you just go into code and Control-C and restart the program. Okay. Before I continue, are there any additional questions on that? Jacob?
You can continue. Go on. And they will appear.
Great. Now, like I said, for beginning something from scratch, back when it first came out, that's usually what you did. You brought in your checkpoint, and you'd select your model, and then you'd start connecting nodes, right? Usually you'd have a LoRa here at the end, and you'd connect your model to model, your clips to your clips. And it's very straightforward. The cool thing about Comfy is it tells you exactly what you have to do. And if there's any questions on it, on what is a VIE, for example, right? So some models have a VAE loaded in, and some models need a separate module for it, right? So let's say we need to find the
What's a VAE? Like if we're, it's like
VAE.
acronyms.
Say what?
What's VAE? Is it acronyms of something, or is it
VAE stands for it's variational auto encoder. It just
okay?
handles the image encoding. It's just for image quality, colors, etc. It's basically, if you don't have it, your image won't turn out good. It's just eventually these acronyms would just mean plug it in, it'll turn good. Some models already have it. Some models don't even need it, right? But to make it less cumbersome to go through these individual loaders and stuff, and of course you can also load 3D images. Comfy UI has done something really cool. That is, you can work with workflows, right? So you can download workflows. You can go to and find workflow templates here, for example, right? So we have some for Flux model, or for the Flux model that's preloaded, which I'll be showcasing today. We have some for SDXL, right? Stable Diffusion, which a lot of people do know. And of course, nearly 3D and for video as well, right? So you can do video in Comfy UI. It's basically a marketplace, right? The way you would load. Yeah.
Before we do this, do we need specialized hardware to run it?
That was the next thing was going on. So Comfy UI has done a great job in condensing down their models. There are, of course, video models especially that require quite the beefy system. So if you have a 4090 or something of that nature, then you're set up great. I currently have on my Linux box, I have two 4090s, and I pretty much load most mid-tier models. High-tier ones, of course, they need a whole lot more beef to it. But
okay, and one more thing, you're saying models. What do those models do?
what do they do?
Yeah, it's like, why do I need the model at all? What is it good for? It's a silly question. It demands a silly answer. But like,
I mean, you could always draw a picture by hand. I was gonna say you could always draw a picture by hand if you like.
oh, so those models draw pictures, and the video models?
They draw pretty pictures. Well, the video models essentially they work by drawing a lot of sequential pictures and then tethering them together to create the image, right? So if we do look at the workflow examples they have in the templates, right, for video, this is one of the base images that you can begin with, and it'll start rendering each one in sequence, right? As you know, a video has, say, 30 frames per second, or when you're playing a game at 120 FPS or something like that, and each one of those frames gets rendered in sequence. Right?
Okay.
Essentially, the model is able to do that when you connect different constraints to it.
So why do you need those like big workflows? Why do you need so many softwares?
Well, I would say the cool thing and the bad thing about models is they're very scatterbrained and they always want to break out and hallucinate. If the whole work in AI is, hey, we have all these great models, be it an image model, text model, a speech model, but our entire work is, okay, how do we keep it focused, right? I don't know if anybody has friends with ADHD brain, but try to have a straightforward and on-topic conversation with them without them being distracted by literally everything, right? But when you do get them on task, it's incredible what they can achieve.
So you do those workflows are helping the models create what you want. Did I say it correctly?
Correct. They're helping them. They're helping you constrain the model into the box that you would like to see output. Right. In this case, it would be this preview.
Okay.
Right. Right. So yeah. So initially I had loaded the safe tensor here, or they're called checkpoints, and this was a stable diffusion. That's essentially your model. And I was going to show stable diffusion, but for some reason it didn't want to load correctly, so I went with Flux instead and just loaded up a workflow that I have here. Another cool thing about Comfy UI is you can take the output of your image, or you can take an output of any image, and you can just drop it back into its interface, and you will then get the workflow for that image presented to you. So you can have a foundation on which to work instead of just starting from scratch, right? Especially for beginners, I think that's the best approach you could take, because it removes some of the overwhelming feeling and sensation of just having a blank canvas. And it's like, I've been looking at code for years, and when I start with a blank canvas, it takes me a minute. But when I look at code, then it makes sense, because it's what I'm used to seeing, right? It just kind of removes some of the intimidation factors for beginners especially.
So Doug has a question. I think he raised his hand. So Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate this. Very coincidentally, I got started a little bit late, so I'm playing catch up right now. But very coincidentally, my wife was interested in creating a short video of an animation of herself saying something to her team. So I was experimenting with AWS using the Luma Ray R2, I think is what it's called, last night, in terms of using textual description of what I wanted to create. And I was totally unsatisfied with what the result was. And then the second part of it was that I didn't realize that couldn't also, or generally AI models for video creation don't generate audio along with it. So you have to generate the audio separately. So it's very interesting what you're seeing right here, or what you're showing right here certainly is a very different thing what I was experiencing with Bedrock last night. But I'm interested in that subject in general now. So it's coincidental that you'd be talking about this tonight.
Nice.
Well, it's not so coincidental. Half the world is doing AI this way or another. So it's like you're one of the people who just ended up here. But let's give Adrian to continue. And
I think something interesting that Doug said is AI's generating the audio separate from the video, right? So Comfy UI, if you build the correct workflow, you can incorporate multi-layer generation where you're generating image, video, and audio, right? Comfy UI does have modules for that. Of course, you have to find your own. One second. There we go. You have to find your own audio model and connect it to it, right? So, for example, if you want to load in the checkpoint for the new Sesame model, they just open source that, right? You could absolutely do that, right? So if you're loading either the audio or you're loading the preview or a decoder or whatever, you can absolutely try to bring that into Comfy UI, right? That's the cool part about being open sourced is anything you want it to do, you can get it to do it in some way, shape, or form. Now, half of it's going to be jury-rigged, right? But you're probably going to get something that's more akin to what you want than going with something that's off the shelf.
You're doing this locally. Rendering is being done locally, right?
Yeah, this is done on my server.
Yeah, it's interesting because and not meaning to distract you from this, it's just that the experience with AWS last night running the Luma model in Bedrock was that the cost was for the lesser resolution, it was 75 cents per second generation. So that's why I was doing it mostly as an experiment, but the result was also kind of strange in terms of they were doing realistic video. I couldn't get it to create animations. So, and it was just kind of strange looking. So I think what you're showing right here actually is a very impressive example of what can be done. And the Comfy UI would be something I think that developers or people would be familiar with, this sort of way of doing it.
Yeah. So, and like I said, one of the great things of Comfy is you can also use base images to pin down what type of image or what type of character you would like to have, right? So, for example, in the sample workflows, if you're looking at, actually Flux has it, right? If you look at Flux, you have out painting, you have in painting, right? You have all these great options that you can use to essentially tailor the output to whatever you're looking for. Now, they do have, for example, Flux Schnell, which runs on a smaller system and usually outputs a lot faster. Unless you have a big beefy system, then it doesn't matter.
You can do it on a machine without even a good GPU. But
correct. So there's a lot of different settings that you can do, but especially for beginners, I would definitely try to just create an image first, right? So even just, I mean, you can see the output I have here. Just getting some kind of an output so that you know your workflows work and are correct is gold, right? That'll be your starting point. And then as you progress, right, loading your model, loading your diffusion model. I'm loading Flux 1, right? I'm just keeping default weights, which means what was it trained on? What is it favoring? What's its focus, right? So, for example, if I want to render streets here, so you have, of course, a prompt clip, right? And I say I want to render, let's see, make make a German Autobahn, right? So when we do that, it
So
will
where are
probably
you plugging it in? Like you're
Oh, right.
saying, clip something. What does it mean?
So clip, like I said in the beginning, so you have here all these boxes, all these nodes will tell you exactly what they're looking for, right? They have an ingestion point and an so an in point and an out point, right? And for example, here I have a model in, so I can either go directly here to a basic guider, or as we can see here, I have two more sections where I need to plug in or can plug in a model node. Right now, the way Comfy UI is set up is if you have a node, right, these are nodes. If you have a node loaded, one of these things can either be, they can be mandatory, which most of them are, or they can be optional. Now, if they're mandatory and you have nothing connected, it won't even run the workflow, right? But again, the cool thing is if you have something that's mandatory and it says it's not going to run the workflow, just follow the lines. If you have something that's not connected, you probably need to connect something to it.
Okay,
right?
so a scheduler is part of the model, correct?
Say again?
The scheduler is kind of part of the model. It's something that's plugged into the model and gives it something information.
Yeah, so each one of these nodes, each one of these loaders, each one of these nodes they're called. Each one of these nodes constrains or does a check on the output of the model, right? And each image is built up with a layer here and there, with layers. It's built up with iterations, and and every time when you press play, right? So by the way, this is the output, right? And I can tell you this from experience, but German Autobahns don't have these kind of on ramps, right? It's illegal, and so it won't render. It will do it looks nice, but you will always have some issues and artifacts with things that a model is not specialized on, right? It's basically constructing this based on something it learned coincidentally, right? So used through data contamination. But this model here, or Flux01 specifically, is trained on advertisement, signage, and portraits, right? So if we want to make a portrait, and just so I can show you kind of how this works when you initiate it, we kind of missed over it with the Autobahn here. But let's see, the portrait. Anybody have a portrait idea?
Mona Lisa.
The Mona Lisa, okay. Holding sign that says, what's the sign going to says? For sale.
Mona Lisa for sale.
There
I
you
wonder
go.
what the price that it will come up with.
All right, so when we press play, when we press run down here, right now, first of all, the run portion is pretty interesting because you can't set it up to instantly run anytime you change anything. So you can go through here and just hammer out 20 prompts as you're typing them in and finishing them or confirming them, it'll just instantly run, right? Now, unless you have it set up in a way where you need that, or you're doing it for some kind of a, I don't know, integration to some other application, I would just leave it on to standardized run. But you can definitely increase the batch count. So if you increase the batch count, it's going to run the process several times over just based on the count you have here, right? I personally prefer to do my batch count in a more customized way, right? So I have a little thing called here, and this is the node that allows me to adjust my batch size in a custom manner. So I saw the robots ahead of time. Before this, that was a batch processing I did through here, and that'll render a panel. And since I'm using the same seed, which, I got my noise seed here, and I got my, where did you go? Did I only put a noise one? Yeah, I only put a noise seed here.
Yeah. Is the noisy image that the model starts with to actually generate the images. All of those starts with the white noise.
Here it is. Yeah, so you had
this white image, correct?
I was going to say, so yes, if I use the same seed to generate 6 images at the same time using my batch processor, it will generate me 6 slightly different images while maintaining some similarity to each other. If I do multiple batches with the same prompt and the same seed, it will generate, generally speaking, it will generate or attempt to generate the same image over and over again. Right?
Okay.
And so that's just, you can get different variations by doing that. And again, I'll put a link for this workflow and the Flux model and everything. I'll put that in the in the GitHub if it isn't already.
Yeah, actually, if you're talking about the workflow, maybe later, but Richard asks, can you walk through getting workflows and models into the GUI after a fresh install? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. It is literally cake. Comfy UI does a really good job.
Later on, finish this.
Yeah,
We'll go
absolutely. Yeah, so just so you see then, I'm going to press play now, and it's going to run through the process, right? So it's going to highlight the boxes that it's applying to or running through in green, so you can kind of see how it works, right? So it's getting the prompt, sending it over there. Now, remember, I do have a beefier graphics card, so it just completely skipped by this because it's already preloaded the models. And so it just usually says, okay, I have the model loaded. All this is ready. We've already run through this, usually the first time you run it, right? And there's the output. And the first time you run it, it's going to load the model, take a little longer, run through everything running up to the prompt and any kind of changes. And then it'll just decode it and output it, as you just saw. Yeah, so Flux does a great job with signage and text, and of course, with portraits. Right? You can put other things in there as well, like you saw the Autobahn, but it's not going to be quite as good. Now, as with any AI, there are different models for different tasks, right? And the cool thing is, again, with Comfy, you can create a workflow where you chain together 6 different models, all focusing in on a different aspect of the image, and then you can get a much greater result when you combine all of them, right? What you do in that case, or here I'll go to my other workflow, is you have something called LoRa's, which are basically the models specialized, or it specializes the model on certain things, right? So, for example, this one here does hyper-realistic water for Stable Diffusion XL. Now, again, unfortunately, I can't show you, but take my word for it. But yeah, I can go into that and show you guys some videos about it afterwards if you like. I can send you some links to it. But at the end of the day, all these workflows are number one, nodes and modules working together to deliver an output, or number two, getting a model constrained in a way that you arrive at the output you're looking for. Right? It's just like with OpenAI or with any kind of text-based LLM, when you're telling it, hey, summarize this paper. And if you just say summarize this paper, it's going to interpret what it thinks you think is important to it based on just its training data. But if you tell it, hey, here's a summary, or you give it context, here's a text on the Mona Lisa. I'm interested in when it was sold. I'm interested in dates. I'm interested in who was the owner and how it came to be, or why it became so important, or has it been stolen. Then the model will know what to look for. It'll give it the context it needs to stay on track, right? Similarly, you can understand these nodes working in the fashion, or working in the same fashion. Of course, you always want to end with your prompt. The more exact you get with what you want, the better output you're going to get. And then at the end of the day, it's just batch processing, right? So I have a client, he wanted, he had a goofy little avatar that he wanted holding a different sign, and he was paying some company a few $100 every single time he wanted to change to the image. And he passed it to me, and I constrained it, and I put up the sign and just ran 200 images through it, or batch processing of 200. And then I just picked out the cream of the crop and handed it to him, right? So at the end of the day, currently, we're still at throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, unfortunately. But we're getting there, right? The more nodes we have, the more control we have over the models. And I would even say the better we understand the models ourselves, the better our output's going to be.
Okay.
Any questions so far?
Can you go and show Richard how to start from scratch? Let's say you just install Comfy UI. What do you see?
Like I showed in the beginning, you just installed Comfy UI, right? You're going to start right here. Just nothing on the screen whatsoever. It's completely empty.
And how do you do something very basic?
So I would suggest you start like this. You go to workflow, right? You browse the templates, and then you look for something you like, right? Let's see. Let's go with.
I saw a flower.
There's a diffusion workflow, so I'm just going to go with this now. Like I said, unfortunately, I'm having difficulty loading things directly onto the server. Say what?
The Flux are working for you? Let's try Flux.
So I'm using Flux, but I'm using a different Flux, right? This is FluxNet.
Okay.
This is meant for smaller systems. I don't have this one. I don't have this image.
Good, by the way.
It is. No, they're not. They're by any means are not bad, right? Especially for experimentation and stuff like that. Well, my point is, well, so now I clicked on it. So, like I said, I would start out by picking what they have here. Pick something from it that you like. It's an embeddings model, the Flux model. I'm going with SDXL. And then just, yeah, click on one of these images. And it's going to attempt to load the workflow, and it's going to tell you what you're missing. And then you just have to click on it to download it, right? Now, again,
it brings the models from there, from where? From Hugging Face or wherever it is?
So from wherever it's at, right? So this model here, yeah, this particular one is from Hugging Face. And so is this one, right? They are working together with Hugging Face as their primary model provider, but you can get these safe tensor files from Civit as well. So Civit AI, I can link that as well. But yeah, so I would just load that, download these models, and it'll give you a workflow, right? So this is the workflow it presented for the selection of that astronaut. Now, again, unfortunately, I can't download these things on my server without jumping through some hoops. But if you have it already downloaded, like I said, click on workflows, download it. This is all the information you need. Now, you can see all the instructions they have in here for the modules. Again, all in an attempt to constrain the model.
So constraints are, for example, image size or something like that, correct? Like we did in the models that you're playing.
Exactly. So you have your image size constraints, you have your seed constraints, you have your how many steps do you want? Steps basically means how often do you want it to iterate over the image before it says, okay, I'm done iterating, right? There is a sweet spot. So every model kind of has a sweet spot. This is just something you either figure out through trial and error or online. There's a lot of model cards. So most models come with a model card that specifically describes what is the default setup or the intended setup for the model to yield the best result in their experience, right? But AI, again, the thing about AI and tech in general is experiment, break shit, right? If you can break it and fix it and then break it again, that's how you have fun with it, right? So don't be afraid to break it, right? But yeah, so as far as what I can show, I'm here at the Flux model. Unfortunately, that's limited right now.
Does someone want to generate an image right now to see how it works, or anyone has an idea?
Yeah.
This way you will feel like they're making an image for you. Come on, we have a crowd of more than 20 people. Someone must have want to see some image.
Yeah. So the last thing.
So can we try?
Yeah.
Do foraminifera.
What?
That's a fossil.
And what?
Okay, it's called foraminifera. It's easy to. It's FORA fora MI. I have difficulties with the English alphabet. Foramin. And yeah, that's it.
And what do you want this foraminifera to be on? In the ground or what?
In the sea, you could have it.
Sea with hermits?
Yeah, it's algae, but when you look at them at the microscope, they have wonderful structures and they have silica bodies instead of calcium. Some of them are calcium, but some of them have silica bodies. They have this strange shape, like pens, but like with a structure.
Okay,
let's see what it does. Right, again, every model is trained on a specific data set, and if this information exists in the data set, it will be able to make something. If not,
it's
going to give you its best guess.
For sale. That's funny. Yeah. Very cute.
And there's some other people want to do something like this, like a 4x4, you in the Rubik's Cube, a fish talking to another fish talking. This is correct?
This is the live one. Yeah, this is the live one. I know the fossils.
You know the fossils.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you see, it's like AI. Many things are like not necessarily what you want. Several more people wrote down several things. Like someone says a 4x4 Rubik's cube. Try that.
4x4 Rubik's Cube.
Is
Sounds
this the
good.
fossil correct now?
No, that's a
Oh,
live
no.
one. It looks like they didn't train on any fossilized images of it.
Okay. But at least
Okay.
you know what the foraminifera is.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's an order. They vary very fast, so then you can relatively fast. They evolve very fast, so then it's easy to date the strata where you find the fossils.
AI doesn't know how to count.
Doesn't know how to count.
Yeah,
Doesn't know how to count.
4x4, it's not 4x4. But
So
it is the
let's
Rubik's
do.
cube. A fish talking to another fish talking, asking what's water.
All right, so just so you remember, guys, this thing was meant for signage and portraits. That's what it was specialized on. Now, again, it's going to do its best attempt at fulfilling the user's request. But if you do want to specialize on Rubik's cubes, for example, you can either fine-tune a model or look for a LoRa adapter, which is one of these things. Look for the LoRa adapter that will teach the model or focus the model down on the Rubik's cube.
Adrian, I think everyone is happy with the results right now. Like foraminifera, even the fact that it knows it and can draw it is amazing. So a fish talking to another fish asking what's water. Let's see if it can do that.
About
If you don't have such powerful GPUs as Adrian has, you will have to wait much longer, but it will finish in a few minutes. And where's the what's water?
well, you have to mention that there's a sign, right? Remember, this thing is specialized in text, so you need to tell it that it wants text as well. So we go here. And then we run it. And it should yield a fish holding a sign asking what's water. Right. And then, of course, you get really descriptive of this, and you can write pages of information that you would like it to do and not like it to do. Right.
A Rubik's Cube made from Tetris blocks. This is interesting.
Rubik's Cube made from Tetris blocks. All right, let's see what it does.
Richard, we're not going to share the screen now. Wait with it after the demo is over. We're near the end. We're just having fun here. After that, we'll allow you to share whatever screen you want.
All right. Now, I will say, like, the reason why, or they're so obviously, if you go to ChatGPT or something like that, you can get. I mean, technically, the Rubik's Cube is a Tetris block, right? So
Yeah.
it's just going to give a Rubik's Cube.
Corey is asking, do you mind if I ask what hardware you have on your computer right now, Adrian?
Yeah, so I'm running this on my server. My server has two GTX 4090s running on it with a metric ton of CPU.
Okay, Corey, curious to know what people have in their hardware setups. We're going to talk about it later. Craig, you said you meant more of a signage and such. I don't get the question.
How about making a classy quote look really nice? All right, Craig, give us a shot. Write the prompt for us. We'll put it in word for word.
How about making classic quotes look really nice? This program was meant more for signage. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not understanding what Craig is asking, but
Here, watch.
what you're writing there, zoom in for a second.
Give me a second.
Zoom in. It's too small to read.
Ah, that's on purpose. It's a surprise.
What I was trying. Hi, this is Craig. What I was trying to
Craig.
ask was, I thought you said this AI, this program was meant more for signage and posters and stuff.
So Flux 01, the model specifically, was trained on Portrait's signage, right?
Okay.
So the writing is good, but the text and the coherent, it still has some issues on it. Now there is Flux 1.5 already out. They, of course, didn't open source that one, right?
Yeah.
A second.
I also put a quote in the chat.
Oh, okay. We'll use that.
One today is worth two tomorrows. Quote Benjamin Franklin.
All right. So let's do this, right? One today is worth two tomorrow.
No. One today is worth two tomorrows, plural, like two of tomorrow.
Okay, it's on there.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
I'm just here.
Thank you.
There you go, like that.
Benjamin Franklin, one today is worth two tomorrows. Yep.
All the sign.
Thanks.
Okay. So guys, this is fairly easy to actually download and use. Follow the instructions, and Adrian gave you some instructions in the link. I'll actually want to go to the GitHub just to show them the instructions in this video as well later. Is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
Later. Finish this, and we'll go and
Like that?
yeah.
Very impressive.
Right. So again, you want to use models, or you want to try to leverage models for what they were trained on, and then like combine them. Right. So I would use Flux 01 if I want to make an advertisement sign or something like that, or if I want
Very
to make
nice, thank you.
a large workflow, then I would use Flux 01 for writing because it does writing extremely well. Right. I would use another model maybe for a mech warrior or something like that, which Flux does a pretty good job on that too. Let's see. Anybody got a mech warrior prompt?
There's a question, actually, very interesting one.
Oh,
can any of this be scripted?
absolutely. You can. So Comfy UI, you can pull out the Python script. Right. You can export it as a Python script.
Now, there was one thing that people should know about Comfy UI. It's GPL license, meaning if you write something that uses Comfy UI, whatever code you do becomes GPL. And GPL is general public license. It's a sticky license that stays with whatever you do. So basically, it's very hard to monetize it because it becomes free very quickly. The minute someone releases it, then that's it. Everyone can copy and it's also anti-patent, also other things. So be careful if you script some things license-wise. Don't make it commercial. GPL is not very commercially friendly. You can do this commercial, but usually it becomes an issue.
So when you say portraits, is this trained on paintings, or is this trained on, let's say, images from cartoons from movies? So
The answer is yes.
excellent.
But yeah, different
Yes to all.
models, each model is trained on something else. And therefore,
Yeah.
they're specializing whatever
Well,
they were trained on.
So what did you have in mind? It sounds like you had a
No,
specific
so if there's
style in mind.
characters, whatever, Bugs Bunny, for example. There's no painting of Bugs Bunny.
Okay, so Nadia, Bugs Bunny, let's go into this world. At some point, you'll get to the point of legality. So Bugs Bunny is something that's trademarked, probably most months that's Disney. So
Okay.
even if you were created, if you start making money out of it, you're in trouble. Disney will
Okay.
sue you. But like to do something in the home, I've seen people do all sorts of like characters. I know someone who's done like a Star Wars character thing. But then again, you should not spread this around unless you have permission from Disney. Usually they're very nice. You ask them and they give you permission and stuff like that. Now Adrian put me in trouble because now I have to go on YouTube and ask for permission. Or delete this part.
This is satire.
Sorry about that.
This is fan art.
This is no, but like I has to not books money. Everyone has to play. Whatever. I'll deal with YouTube later because if it has copyrighted material, then you cannot upload it in YouTube. I'll probably have to cut it out. No, you just gave me work. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Who else? Superman? Gotcha.
No. Enough, guys. Unless someone has something really important that they want to be recorded, then please can we end this demo and stick around? We'll still be around, and Adrian may stay with us, but like depends on how much he wants to sleep. But because for him it's like 3 a.m. now or 2 a.m.
Rolling up on 2. No worries.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, David, that's a great question. So determining what model to use for what, that's part of the adventure. I mean, that's kind of you have to trial and error. There's a lot of documentation out there where models talk about what their training data set is and kind of what the intention is behind it. And honestly, Google's your best friend, right? If you're looking for a specific model to do some kind of a task. So for example, I don't know, anime, very popular. Everybody loves anime, right? The JSON workflow I have up here, the anime workflow, this was specialized for anime, right? Now there's a lot of models for anime, right? But essentially you'd go to Civet or Hugging Face and you'd look for anime model, or you'd look for, in this case, Animagine, which is a SDLX checkpoint. Right.
Yeah, we have one more that Doug is asking. He wants an old computer programming sweating over a keyboard.
That was just a funny thought. Lately I've not been able to get an AI to generate a really good image of that, and I've been kind of trying here and there. So it seems appropriate, particularly for me. So
okay. What are you asking for, a self-portrait or what?
in a sense, it ends up being that. It's for I used to work with. I retired a few months ago. I used to work with some young guys, and I think that's how they saw me. In fact, I just downloaded the demo. Or I just downloaded Comfy, and just ran it on my MacBook Pro, and wow, I'm really impressed. Just out of the box, it worked well. So I really appreciate that is a much better image than the ones that I've gotten from any of those that I've tried. So it's just very interesting to see that. Thanks, I appreciate it, and thanks for this presentation. I did not know anything about Comfy.
Yeah, but again,
show him how you generate multiple of those. This is important.
Yeah, sure. Let's just let this finish loading. We're going to use the same prompt, or do we want to use something else?
Same prompt. Just show him what happens.
Sure. Let me turn off the random user.
While we wait, Doug, what generation MacBook Pro did you use to sample
M1.
this? Oh
M1.
Yeah, fantastic.
Literally, I mean, I expected it to take a lot longer. I mean, the UI came up perfectly, queued right away, and 15-30 seconds later, I'm looking at the initial prompt in there. So I'm just very impressed with that on an M1.
Yeah,
wonderful. I'm downloading now.
All right. Yeah. So, like I said, because I have the manual install, every now and then it will crash on you. But for Comfy, it's just reload it, shut it off, and back on. It's very, very old Mac in that way. Can you still hear me, or did my internet totally cut out?
We're hearing you.
Oh, okay. Oh, goody.
We're just curious, like, wow, why does it take much longer? Because it generates each one separately and then shows them all, or?
Oh, here. So progress bars here. The Comfy UI just crashed on me. Like I said, the manual The manual installs has a lot of bugs. There's a lot of, or not a lot, but there's some bugs. The desktop version is considered a little more stable than the manual install, but again, your trade-off is less customizable.
Burton, stick around. We'll answer your question in a minute, okay? Not now. We'll finish this first. So we want to finish the demo, and then we're going to move to your questions. Okay.
Right, and it's done. Ta-da.
So
It's very impressive. It's interesting to think of the applications for things like this for anybody doing UI generation, to have customized UIs per user, even in gaming or advertising or whatever. The idea that you could dynamically give them a unique experience is very impressive. That this is working so seamlessly, I'm totally impressed.
Yeah, and again, this is only scratching the surface, right? With image generation, video generation, heck, even sound generation. There's so much work that's already been done, and there's so much opportunity out there that it's just is yet to be taken advantage of, right? It's there's models that can on the fly generate images, of course, not of the same quality, right? But of course, they're prioritizing speed over quality, right? There's depth map images. There's what is it? A friend of mine, he made a model that he connects to his webcam, and it turns everything the webcam sees into a depth map live, right? So it's the sky's the limit, really. Right? But yeah, and so the multi-processing, right? You have here similar looking characters, right? It's not always going to keep 100% onto it, but there is a similarity to it. And again, by expanding this workflow into more constraints, I could probably get it to, or I can get it to output this character consistently in different positions, different poses, right? Yeah, and again, for image generation, I know that's nothing new. ChatGPT does it. It makes great images. Midjourney does it. Amazing. Any kind of closed source model, of course, they're going to charge you for it. It's pretty heavily censored. Won't do most things. Comfy UI and running things locally, of course, you have more freedom in that regard. But yeah, otherwise, that's the information I have for you guys today. If there's any other questions, I'll stay after the talk to get more answered.
it's time to thank you. So please make some noise, or we have all sorts of like nice things that you can give some. Please, thank you. Yay! Okay. I'm gonna stop the recording. Don't go away. We're still around. I'm just stopping the recording. Thank you, Adrian. We're getting off the record now.